Capricorn, sit still for a moment before we begin, because I want you to feel this the way I'm feeling it right now, not as an idea, but as a presence that has walked quietly into the room where I'm working. There is someone I can sense the instant I turn my attention toward you, someone whose signal is not loud but persistent, like a single note held under everything else. You know exactly who they are. You knew before I said a word. That small tightening in your chest as you started listening, that involuntary flicker of a face you weren't planning to think about today, that is the whole reading right there. Arriving before I've even described it. So let me describe it anyway, slowly, so you can watch it match what your own body already told you. The first thing that comes through is that this silence between you was never emptiness. That's the mistake most people make when someone stops reaching out. They read the quiet as a closed door, a final answer, a verdict delivered without words. But what I feel around this particular person is not a door that's shut. It's a breath that has been held for far too long. There is enormous pressure inside that stillness, the kind of pressure that builds precisely because nothing is being released. If this connection had truly ended, you would not still feel the weight of it the way you do. Endings are light once they're real. This is heavy, and heavy means unfinished. I want to correct something you've been telling yourself about why the communication stopped, because I don't think the story you've been carrying is the true one. You've probably built a version where you did something wrong, where you said too much or too little, where you were somehow the reason they slipped away. Set that down. What I'm sensing is a moment that got misread on both sides. A small collision of timing and mood that neither of you meant and neither of you knew how to fix afterward. It wasn't a rejection of you. It was a fumble in the dark, and then the awful human tendency to let a fumble harden into a habit, and the habit into a wall that neither of you actually wanted to build. Here is where it gets interesting. And here at Spiritual Light Tarot, I always try to give you the part that other readings leave out, the part underneath the obvious. This person has not spent the silence forgetting you. They have spent it circling you. In their quieter hours, in the moments right before sleep when the defenses come down, you are there. Not as a regret they filed away, but as an open loop their mind keeps returning to, replaying, editing, wishing they'd handled differently. You have been far more present in their inner world than their outer behavior would ever suggest. That gap between what someone shows and what someone carries is exactly where this whole situation lives. Let me tell you what they've been protecting, because it explains everything about why they haven't reached out first. There is a pride in this person that is really just fear wearing a costume. They convinced themselves that too much time had passed, that reaching out now would look strange, that you had surely moved on and would greet their message with cold politeness or worse, with nothing at all. Every day that pride told them it was too late made the next day feel even later. That's the trap they've been caught in, and it's a lonely one. They are not staying away because they stopped caring. They are staying away because they care so much that the possibility of your indifference terrifies them into stillness. Now feel this next part shift, because something has genuinely moved in the recent stretch of time. The pattern that held both of you in place has developed a crack. I don't know the exact shape of what caused it, but I feel the aftermath clearly, a loosening, a softening, a moment where this person let themselves admit what they'd been refusing to admit. Maybe something reminded them sharply of you. Maybe they reached a point of quiet honesty with themselves that they couldn't reach before. Whatever the trigger, the wall they built is no longer as solid as it was. There are gaps in it now. Light is getting through, and light always finds its way toward the thing it's been reaching for. You should know how they've been keeping tabs on you, because you may have felt it without being able to name it. It's rarely direct. It comes through the edges, a lingering on something connected to you, a question asked to a mutual thread of your life that was really a question about you underneath, a habit of noticing anything that carries your echo. There is a kind of watching that happens from a distance when someone isn't ready to step forward but can't bear to fully let go. That's what has been happening. You have been observed with tenderness from a place just out of your sight, And part of you has sensed the warmth of that gaze even without proof. But I don't want to spend this entire time on them, because the most important shift didn't happen in their world. It happened in yours. During this silence, you became someone new. You stopped waiting in the way you used to wait. You learned to fill your own hours, to steady your own breathing, to look at your reflection and recognize a person who could survive the loss of this connection and keep walking. That was not wasted time. That was the most important work you've done in a long while, and it changed the entire foundation on which any reunion would now stand. You are not the same person who felt abandoned. You are someone who found their own feet. That difference matters more than you realize, because it means the version of you this person is about to encounter again is not the one they left. They will feel it immediately the moment contact resumes. There is a new steadiness in you now, a quiet self-possession that wasn't fully formed before. And here's the beautiful irony of it. The thing the universe seems to arrange with a knowing smile. The very strength you built to live without them is the exact quality that will draw them back and hold their attention when they return. Wholeness is magnetic. The person who no longer desperately needs the connection is the person the connection comes home to. Let me describe the shape this reconnection is likely to take, because I know your imagination has been rehearsing dramatic scenes, and I want to gently redirect you. This is not going to arrive like thunder. It won't be a grand cinematic declaration on a rain-soaked street. What I feel is far softer and honestly far more real. It comes as something small and almost casual on the surface. A simple opening, a low-key message, or a quiet appearance. The kind of thing that could be mistaken for ordinary if you weren't paying attention. The bigness of it lives underneath the smallness of its delivery. That's often how the most meaningful returns happen, wrapped in the plainest paper. And I can feel the emotional tone they'll carry when it happens, which is worth preparing for so it doesn't catch you off balance. Expect a certain nervousness beneath their words, a carefulness, a testing of the water. They will not lead with everything they feel. They'll lead with something safe, something reachable, giving both of you room to breathe. Underneath that caution, though, is a hope so tender it can barely look at itself directly. Read the caution as care. The tentativeness isn't weakness or disinterest. It's the sound of someone who understands exactly how much this matters and is frightened of doing it wrong. There is an unfinished sentence hanging in the air between the two of you, and I feel it wanting to complete itself. Something was left unsaid when the communication stopped. A thought that got interrupted, a feeling that never found its words, a moment of honesty that was almost spoken and then swallowed. That unspoken thing has been sitting there this whole time like a note held without resolution. And part of the pull you feel toward each other is simply the natural desire of an incomplete thing to become complete. When you reconnect, that sentence will finally get to finish itself, and there is real relief waiting on the other side of it. Now I need to talk to you about how to receive this, because how you show up will shape everything that follows. The temptation, when someone you missed comes back, is to fling every door open at once, to pour out all the longing you held back, to make it easy for them by taking on all the emotional labor yourself. Resist that gentle flood, not out of coldness, but out of self-respect. Let them do their share of the reaching. Let them extend and then meet them, rather than sprinting the whole distance while they merely stand still. A reconnection built on mutual effort has roots. One built on your effort alone stays fragile. I want to draw a clear line for you between two things that can look identical from the outside but feel completely different from within, because this is the pivot the whole situation turns on. There is reopening a door, and there is being pulled backward. Reopening a door means you step forward as the whole person you've become, choosing this connection from strength on new terms, with your eyes open. Being pulled backward means you abandon everything you learned and collapse into an old version of yourself the moment they appear. This return is meant to be the first kind. You are not going back to what was. If anything happens here, it's the building of something that never fully got to exist the first time. Consider for a moment what this person actually represents to you. beneath the specifics of who they are. Because I think the connection points to something larger than the two of you. People who linger in our lives long after they've gone quiet are often mirrors, reflecting back a part of ourselves we're still learning to hold. This person showed you a capacity for openness or for hope or for a kind of loving that you didn't know you had until they drew it out of you. Even in the silence, they've been teaching you that this capacity lives in you permanently now. It's yours to keep, whether or not they return. And knowing that is what finally frees you to want the reunion without needing it. The timing of all this has been confusing you, I know, because you've been asking when, as if the answer were a fixed point on a calendar you just haven't been shown. But that's not how this works, and it's not how it's ever worked. The timing isn't governed by clocks. It's governed by readiness, by the slow alignment of two inner worlds finally reaching the same page at the same moment. What I can tell you is that the readiness is arriving. Both of you have been ripening toward this without knowing the other was doing the same. And things that ripen at the same pace tend to meet at the same time. Let me name something about your own worthiness that I think you've been quietly doubting through all of this. Somewhere in the silence, a small voice in you started to wonder whether you were easy to leave, whether you were the kind of person people walk away from and don't come back to. I want to dismantle that lie completely. The very fact that this connection refuses to dissolve, that it keeps its grip across all this quiet, is proof of your significance in this person's life. You are not forgettable. You are not disposable. You are the one they couldn't fully release even while telling themselves they had. Let that settle into the place where the doubt used to live. There's a softness that's going to be required of you when the moment comes. And I don't mean weakness. I mean the strength that can afford to be gentle. When this person returns, they will likely arrive with some awkwardness, maybe some clumsy first words, possibly an approach that isn't as smooth as you might wish. Try not to punish them for the imperfection of the attempt. The fact that they're attempting at all against all the fear that kept them frozen is the real message. Grace in that first moment will open far more than perfection ever could. You can be discerning and warm at the same time. Those two things were never enemies. I feel a warmth building as this reading moves toward its center, and it's the warmth of something being restored rather than something being risked. So many reconnections carry a note of danger, a sense of playing with fire, of reopening a wound. This one doesn't feel like that to me. This one feels like a homecoming. Like two people who wandered off in different directions, finally turning around and recognizing the same landmark. There is safety in what's approaching, not the false safety of nothing ever changing, but the deeper safety of two people who have both grown enough to hold something real without breaking it this time. Pay attention to your dreams and your quiet moments in the coming stretch, because that's where you'll feel the shift before it shows up in the outer world. Connections that are about to change often announce themselves first in the subtle realm, a sudden vivid dream of this person, an inexplicable pull to check for a message, a day where they cross your mind so persistently you can't shake it. These are not tricks of a lonely heart. They are the early tremors of a reconnection gathering itself. When you feel that unmistakable surge of them, don't dismiss it. Something on their end is stirring in the same instant, reaching across the same invisible distance toward you. I keep coming back to the quality of this person's caring, because I want you to trust it even before they prove it. What I sense is not casual. It's not the kind of interest that flickers and dies. There is a depth to how this person holds you internally that surprises even them. They may have tried to convince themselves it was less than it was, tried to file you under lessons learned and move past, but the feeling kept refusing to shrink to the size they assigned it. That refusal is your evidence. Feelings that stay large across long silences are feelings with roots that go all the way down. Understand that when they come back, they'll be carrying a version of you in their mind that they've been living with for a while. And part of the beauty of the reunion is watching them meet the real you and find you even better than the memory. The person they've been missing is a slightly frozen image, a snapshot from the moment things went quiet. The person they'll actually encounter has grown, deepened, become more fully herself. That discovery, that pleasant shock of finding you more rather than less, is going to move them in ways they won't have anticipated. You will exceed your own memory. That's a rare and powerful thing. Let yourself feel a little excited now, not anxious, but genuinely warmed by the possibility, because the energy you carry into this reconnection matters enormously. If you approach it braced for disappointment, you'll broadcast a wariness that makes the whole thing harder for both of you. But if you can hold a quiet, open readiness, a sense of welcome without desperation, you become the kind of presence that's easy to return to. Your inner state is not a passive thing here. It's an active ingredient. The peace you cultivate now becomes the atmosphere they step into. And people always feel that atmosphere before they consciously register anything else. I want to speak to the part of you that's afraid to hope, because I know it's there, and I know it's been burned before by expecting too much. That protective part learned its lesson in a real experience, and I honor it. But protection that never lets you hope again isn't protecting you, it's just quietly shrinking your life. There's a way to stay open without being naive, to let this possibility in while keeping your feet on the ground. You don't have to choose between armor and foolishness. You can hope wisely. You can want this while staying whole. That middle path is exactly where the healthiest version of this reconnection lives. Something I trust about what's approaching is that it isn't asking you to unlearn a single thing you gained in the silence. A reconnection that requires you to become smaller, to forget your growth, to pretend you never found your own strength would not be worth having. But that's not what this is. What's coming actually needs the new you, the steadier you, the you who knows her own worth. The growth wasn't preparation for being alone forever. It was preparation for showing up differently in exactly this kind of moment. Everything you built is about to become useful in the most beautiful way. There's a forgiveness that may want to move through you as this unfolds, and I mention it not as an obligation, but as a relief that's available to you. Somewhere you may be holding a small stone of resentment about the way things went quiet, a residue of hurt about being the one left waiting. You don't have to force yourself past that. But you may find, when the reconnection begins, that the resentment simply loosens its grip on its own, dissolved by the understanding that they were struggling in the silence just as you were. Forgiveness here isn't something you'll have to manufacture. It's something that arrives naturally once you see the full picture. And it's one of the gentlest gifts this whole situation is bringing you. I want you to notice how you feel right now compared to how you felt when you started listening, because that shift is meaningful. Whatever heaviness you carried in has, I hope, begun to lighten. That lightening is not just my words landing. It's your own inner knowing, recognizing truth and relaxing in response to it. Something in you trusts what I'm describing because something in you has felt it coming all along. You've had a quiet certainty underneath all your doubt, a stubborn sense that this wasn't really over. Honor that certainty. It's been more accurate than your fear this entire time. The families of energy around reconnections like this one tend to move in waves. And I want you to be patient with the rhythm rather than demanding a single decisive event. It may not all resolve in one perfect conversation. It might come in stages. A first tentative contact, then a pause, then a deepening, then another pause, then a genuine opening. Don't read the pauses as failure. They're part of how two careful hearts rebuild trust, testing each step before putting their full weight on it. The pauses aren't them losing interest. They're both of you making sure the ground can hold what you're about to place on it. For those of you who found your way to this reading feeling like the connection you're thinking about is smaller or less certain than what I'm describing, I want to reassure you that the same principles apply at every scale. Whether this is a great love or a meaningful friendship or something you can't quite categorize, the truth holds. Silence is not the same as ending. Distance is not the same as indifference. And the pull you feel is real information, not just longing dressed up as intuition. Trust the pull. It's pointing at something that's pointing back at you. Everything I sense here at Spiritual Light Tarot keeps confirming that this thread between you was never actually cut, only stretched. Let me offer you a way to hold this waiting period so it doesn't hollow you out, because there is going to be a little more waiting, and how you spend it matters. Don't sit by the door watching for their arrival. Live your full life. Pour into the things that light you up. Keep building the self you've been building. Paradoxically, the more absorbed you are in your own blossoming, the faster and more naturally this reconnection tends to arrive. Watched pots and watched phones behave the same way. Turn your gaze toward your own life and let them find you mid-stride, radiant and busy and beautifully occupied. That's the version of you that draws people home. I feel this person's respect for you, and I don't think you fully appreciated how much they hold you in high regard. It's easy when someone goes quiet to assume their silence is a statement about your value. But this person actually looks up to you in ways they may never have fully expressed. They admire something in you, a quality of spirit, a way you move through the world, a light you carry that they found rare. That admiration didn't vanish in the silence. If anything, distance sharpened it, the way you only realize the brightness of a lamp once you've spent time in a dimmer room. When they come back, some of what they'll be reaching for is that light of yours they've missed. There's a maturity in how this is going to unfold that I find genuinely reassuring, and it's a sign that both of you have grown. This won't be a repeat of whatever pattern caused the original break. Both of you carry the memory of how it went quiet, and neither of you wants to repeat it. That shared awareness becomes a kind of protection, a mutual carefulness that guides the reconnection along a wiser path. You're not walking blindly back into old dynamics. You're walking forward with the wisdom the silence taught you both. And connections rebuilt with that kind of awareness tend to be sturdier than they ever were before the break. I want to acknowledge the courage it takes to even entertain this possibility. Because hoping is brave. It would be easier in some ways to slam the door shut yourself, to decide it's over, to protect yourself with finality, choosing to stay open, to let the reading in, to allow yourself to want something that isn't guaranteed, that takes a particular kind of bravery that not everyone has. You have it. The fact that you're still here listening, still willing to feel, still refusing to let cynicism have the last word, says something lovely about your heart. That openness is not a weakness to be ashamed of. It's a strength most people never manage to keep. As this reconnection approaches, you may notice old feelings resurfacing, and I want you to greet them without alarm. When someone significant returns, the heart sometimes replays its whole history with them, the good and the tender and the bittersweet all at once. That flood is normal. It doesn't mean you're stuck in the past. It means your heart is doing its housekeeping, sorting through what it kept, deciding what to carry forward. Let the feelings come and let them pass through you. You don't have to act on every wave. Just witness them and trust that you'll arrive at the other side of the flood clearer about what you actually want. Here's a truth I keep circling back to because it's the quiet center of this whole reading. This reconnection is ultimately not happening to you. It's happening with you and through you. And partly because of the energy you've been holding. You are not a passive recipient waiting to be chosen. You are a co-author of what's unfolding. And your inner shifts have been rippling outward this entire time, reaching the very person you've been thinking about. The longing you felt was never one directional. It was a conversation happening in a language deeper than words. And both of you have been speaking it. What arrives now is the surface finally catching up to a connection that was alive underneath the whole time. When the moment of reconnection actually comes, I want you to remember to breathe and to stay in your body, because the mind will want to race ahead into fantasies and fears the instant it happens. Come back to the present. Feel your feet. Let the reunion be what it actually is, moment by real moment, rather than the movie your imagination has been playing. The real thing is always richer than the rehearsal, but only if you're present enough to receive it. Don't miss the actual person in front of you by being lost in the version you built in their absence. Be here. That's where the magic actually lives. I'd love for you to carry a small phrase with you as you move through the coming days. Something to return to when the doubt tries to creep back in. Let it be simple. What is mine finds its way to me. Say it when you feel the impatience rising, when the silence tempts you to despair, when you catch yourself checking for a message that hasn't come yet. What is truly yours is not something you have to chase or force or manipulate into being. It arrives through alignment, not through effort. And this connection, if it's meant for you, is already making its way back along a road you can't see but can absolutely trust. There is a place, I sense, that holds the memory of the two of you, somewhere you spent time together or that became quietly associated with them in your mind. That place has been carrying a charge this whole time, and when this person's energy stirs, places like that one often light up first, pulling at you for reasons you can't quite explain. If you find yourself unexpectedly drawn back towards somewhere connected to them, or if such a place keeps surfacing in your thoughts, take it as a signpost rather than a coincidence. The outer world often mirrors the inner shift, and geography has a strange way of announcing what the heart is about to do. I sense that the people around this person have begun to notice a change in them, even if you haven't seen it yourself. There's a restlessness they can't fully hide, a distraction, a way their attention drifts mid-conversation towards something private. Those closest to them may have caught them in a wistful mood they can't quite explain away. This is what it looks like from the outside when someone is quietly wrestling with the pull to reach out. The struggle you can't witness directly is leaving traces in the world they move through, and those traces all point in your direction, whether or not anyone around them has named it yet. Let me describe something almost physical that happens to this person when you cross their mind, because it's more visceral than you might assume. There's a tightening, a small ache somewhere in the chest, a wave that moves through them and leaves them momentarily still. Thoughts of you are not neutral for them. They land in the body, not just the mind. That's how you know a connection has real weight. When the mere memory of a person produces an actual sensation rather than a passing image. You have been living in their nervous system this whole time, not just their memory. And the body is far more honest than the stories the mind tells to keep the peace. I want to tell you about the messages that were written and never sent, because I feel there have been several. This person has begun to reach out to you more than once in the privacy of their own thoughts, has composed words, has come right up to the edge of pressing send, and then pulled back at the last moment. Those unsent messages are not nothing. They are rehearsals. Each one brings them closer to the version they'll finally have the courage to actually deliver. The attempts you never saw were real attempts, and they mean the impulse to reconnect has been alive and active, gathering strength with every draft that didn't quite make it out into the open. Understand that this person's return isn't a step backward into the past, even though it might feel that way at first glance. It's more like two separate timelines finally converging. You've been living your life growing along your own path, and they've been living theirs growing along a parallel one. What's approaching is not a rewind to who you both used to be. It's the meeting point of who you've each become. A fresh convergence of two people who happen to share a history, but are arriving at this reunion as updated versions of themselves. Think of it less as reopening an old chapter and more as two roads that split long ago, quietly curving back toward the same destination. There's a protectiveness in this person that surprises me, a quiet instinct to shield you, to make sure you're okay, that has persisted through all the silence. Even while staying away, some part of them has kept a watchful eye on your well-being, has felt a flicker of concern when they imagined you struggling, has wanted good things for you, even from a distance. This isn't the energy of someone who dismissed you. It's the energy of someone who never stopped caring what happens to you. That protective thread is one of the strongest signals I'm picking up, and it's one of the surest signs that what stands between you is love in some form, not indifference. You'll want to know how to tell whether their return is genuine or just a passing impulse, and I want to give you something solid to hold. Genuine reconnection has a consistency to it. It follows through. It shows up again after the first contact rather than vanishing back into silence. A passing impulse flares and fades. What I feel around this situation has the quality of the first kind, a return with staying power, a person who has done enough inner work to actually sustain the reconnection rather than sparking it and retreating. Watch for the follow through, and I believe you'll find it there, steadier than you dared to expect. To make room for what's arriving, you may need to release the specific story you've been telling about how this should look. The mind builds detailed expectations, exact scripts of who says what and when and how the reunion should feel. Those scripts, however comforting, can actually get in the way because reality rarely matches the rehearsal. And if you're clutching the script too tightly, you might miss the real thing when it shows up wearing a different outfit than you imagined. Loosen your grip on the how. Stay clear on what you want at the level of feeling and let the universe handle the delivery details. It tends to be more creative than we are. There's a gift you're going to be able to give this person when they return, and it's the very thing they've been quietly starving for. It's the experience of being truly seen. Somewhere along the way, this person has felt unseen, misunderstood, reduced to a version of themselves that isn't the whole truth. What you offered them in the connection you shared was the rare feeling of being genuinely perceived and accepted. That's a large part of what they've been missing without being able to name it. When you meet again, your capacity to see them clearly, to recognize who they really are underneath their defenses, will land like water on dry ground. You have something they can't easily find elsewhere. If it feels right to you, I'd invite you to do something quiet and simple in the coming days. A small practice that costs nothing and can shift a great deal. In a still moment, bring this person to mind, and rather than sending longing or worry in their direction, send them a wave of peace. Wish them well, sincerely, with no agenda attached. Release the grip of needing anything from them just for that moment and offer genuine goodwill instead. This does something subtle and powerful. It clears the channel between you of the static of desperation, and a clear channel is far easier for someone to travel back along than one crowded with anxious reaching. I want you to consider that closure and reunion might turn out to be the same event here, which is a possibility most people never imagine. You may have been thinking you need one or the other, either the door reopening or a clean sense of completion so you can move on. But sometimes life offers a third thing, a reconnection that itself becomes the healing, a conversation that both reopens the connection and resolves what was left hanging, all at once. You don't necessarily have to choose between getting them back and getting peace. What's approaching may hand you both in the same tender moment, and that's a kind of grace worth staying open to. One of the quieter gifts hidden in all of this is what it will do for your relationship with your own intuition going forward. You've been sensing this reconnection coming for a while, even when logic argued against it, even when the silence seemed to say otherwise. When it actually unfolds the way some deep part of you always suspected it would, that's going to teach you something you'll carry for the rest of your life, which is that your inner knowing is trustworthy. This whole experience is quietly training you to believe yourself, to honor the signals that arrive without proof. That lesson will serve you long after this particular story resolves in every corner of your life, where you're learning to trust what you feel. Waiting is anxious, contracted, always leaning toward a future that hasn't come. Knowing is spacious, settled, at peace in the present because it trusts what's on its way. You spend enough time in the waiting. Step into the knowing. Let yourself feel quietly and without needing proof that this thread between you and this person is intact, that the reconnection is real, that the silence was a chapter and not the whole book. That settled feeling is not delusion. It's the deepest kind of intelligence, the kind that senses truth before the evidence arrives. If this reading found you today, I don't think it was an accident, and I say that with all the warmth I have, because everything from Spiritual Light Tarot seems to reach the people who most need to hear it at the exact moment they need to hear it. You came here carrying a question about someone who went quiet, and I hope you're leaving with something steadier than an answer. I hope you're leaving with a felt sense that you were never as forgotten as your fear suggested, that the connection you've been grieving was only resting, and that you, exactly as you are now, are more than ready for what's making its way back to you. Hold that. Let it be true, because it is. And let the quiet knowing carry you gently forward until the moment this all becomes real.